Ghanatube so modofo snow we masai so atena se aja konwa fefefe na ebusiafo se nya matena se de no se nsem ahodo bi enkoso ewo oman na entempass no ye bekwa kutie ne ahwe nsem bi a enkoso ewo oman Ghana.
But coming up next, let's stay on the matters of politics because, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing things play out very quickly in the New Patriotic Party. They have a meeting on July 3rd, as communicated by the national executives of the party in that statement last week. The latest poll by Global Info Analytics, as a research agency, showing that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is gradually gaining grounds and leadership in terms of the persons they surveyed and who they said they would vote for if elections were held today. That's according to the latest from Global Info Analytics, which was released earlier today by Musa Dankwa, and the information as we have it so far here on Ghana Tonight. And this is one that we've been looking at quite closely when the information came through earlier today. And from what we got to know, the online sample size of over 1,092, telephone sample size of 1,456. Then there were some face-to-face engagements. Persons who, beyond the online, so this was in 3 phases. This survey, according to Global Info Analytics, they did an online survey that engaged 1,092 people. And then they had a telephone survey that engaged over 1,700 people. And then also they had a face-to-face engagement, interaction with the respondents, over 7,000 of them. So almost 10,000 respondents if you combine the online, telephone, and face-to-face. And based on the outcome of their survey, from what they put out earlier today, if you take a combination of both NPP and NDC respondents, because as part of the questions they'll ask you, they'll find out your political affiliation. And so they know the people who are NDC and the respondents who are NPP. Over 50% of the respondents who are NDC, and then also majority of the respondents who are NPP, all put together, 56% of the general voter support was to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And take note of this, because there is a drill down to this 57%, because out of the 57%, the 56% as we are seeing, there is a population of NPP and NDC respondents. Now, within the NPP respondents population or sample size, 70% of those respondents who are NPP say that if elections were held today, they're going to vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. That's an increase of about 8% since April this year, when the last poll was put out by Global Info Analytics. So take note of that. This 56% is a respondents of both NPP and NDC. Now, when you look at the next person, Kennedy Ța, the former member of parliament for the Asin Central constituency, the combination of NPP and NDC respondents, 23% of them, the total respondents, said if elections were held today, they expressed support for him, both NPP and NDC. But then if you drill down the data, 17% of the NPP sample within this 23% said they were going to vote for Kennedy Ța if elections were held today. Then Dr. Ța, former education minister, his also, we see a drop of about 3% since the last poll of Global Info Analytics in April. 9% as we're saying now. And within the NPP population that was surveyed in this poll, 7% said they were going to vote for him. And then, interestingly, Musa Dankwa decided to throw in Patrick Yabuama, who is the member of parliament for the Kaikwe Central constituency. And in fact, there are many who have also thrown his name in there, as well as one person that they think should be considering to test his mettle in this flag bearership of the New Patriotic Party. He has not come out to say anything of a sort or giving any indication whatsoever. He has only granted interviews raising concerns about the decision of the party to elect a flag bearer on the 31st of January 2026. He believes that the party should fix the problems before thinking about electing a flag bearer. But Musa Dankwa threw his name in there, and guess what? Based on the respondents, he even got much more support than Brian Echampo, who was already the former Greek minister and a Betifi member of parliament, who was already declared his intention to contest. And you can say these are early days yet, but guess what? If they're going to go with the January 31, 2026 date, it is not early days at all. It's just some 6 months away from the D-Day that the party would eventually, approve as a day to elect the flag bearer of the party going into election 2028. Dr. Jonathan Asantiochri is a senior lecturer, political science department, University of Cape Coast. He's a political analyst. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. And you see the details of this survey, the latest poll by Global Info Analytics. You have a copy. Now, seeing that to the extent that even with both PP and NDC respondents, majority of them are saying that if elections were held today, they're going to express their support for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, coming up top amongst those who have declared their intentions to contest the flag bearership of the NPP. From the strategic point of view, would it be strategically advantageous for the party to still then go with this, that, well, even Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has support with NPP and NDC respondents as well? Or would it play to the party's good to, as it were, outwit the very obvious and present another candidate other than Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia?
Well, let's see between to your viewers and to your good self. Interesting questions you have there. Whichever way you look at it, it has its own ramifications. And what are they? First of all, when you talk about 50% of the NDC support base that were interviewed, preferring Dr. Bawumia to be the flag bearer, obviously that should tell you that they believe, because of the baggage that he has, not only his, that of the former president, it will be quite easier for the NDC, whichever candidate is elected, to beat Dr. Bawumia. That said, the other side is that it can only be when you have an economy that the NDC inherited from the NPP becoming worse off. And that is the only reason why Dr. Bawumia can have the opportunity to win the election. But if we are looking at the current situation as we find ourselves and seeing reduction in petrol prices, reduction, as it were, in transportation fare, the cedi appreciating against the dollar, then it becomes some kind of a Herculean task for the NPP and that of Dr. Bawumia should he emerge. And so the other thing too is that if he does not, then it means that whoever is going to come up as a leader of the NPP will be a wild card. And wild cards are usually dangerous because when you look at lawn tennis, for example, you have the world number one, and then suddenly a wild card would have qualified because of certain things that they would have done. The world number one does not know that particular player who is a wild card. They have lost matches to these individuals or players in time past. And so wild cards are very dangerous to play with. And so the other aspect in terms of a wild card is the fact that would Ghanaians readily risk the fact that someone who has not been tried and tested, for example, someone who is probably an upstart, so to speak, would they be ready to entrust the reins of governance in the hands of that person? I think that in itself will depend upon the way and manner that wildcard who would have been elected will conduct himself. And if he's able to conduct himself unconventionally, I've said that those things tend to confuse voters because that will mean that they do not really know that person. They do not know the ins and the outs of that particular person. They've not been so much aware of the political style and strategy of that person, and so on and so forth. And so when that person goes on a promising spree, and you know very well that there are so many Ghanaians that are vulnerable, but these days it is very difficult, to just hoodwink people, say whatever you want, because they can really read in between the lines and tell you that you are fake. There's no way they are going to vote for you. But wildcards are always dangerous to play against, and that's the more reason why I'm looking at the issues, as you have asked, from these two perspectives. It is not going to be simple for the NDC to just be the wild card, because that wild card will dissociate himself from the record of Dr. Bawumia and that of the former president, especially the bad ones, and then will easily cling on the good ones and also say the things that he will want to do anew. And that in itself could easily, hoodwink some of these voters, but not all. But there is the other, side of the equation, and that is the fact that as long as the NDC gets 2 or 3 acts right, that means that the NPP will struggle when it comes to the elections. What are they? Have already mentioned the first one, the economy. And once they handle the indicators of the economy that they inherited from the NPP with a good side of it, then there is no way any NPP candidate can beat them. 2, the transition. Once they are able to handle the transition carefully, and there is that internal understanding that all of us cannot be president at the same time, and that it ought to be somebody at this point in time, tomorrow it could be another person, that it means that there will be that, internal unity and cohesion. And once that is there, I think that the NPP will struggle for the first 4 and the second 4 years of the NDC.
I see. So I get it that you pin the fortunes of the NPP being enhanced in 2028 to 2 things: the state of the economy going into that election, which is going to be a major decider, as we saw in 2024, because people will look at the state of affairs, the state of their personal economy, and vote. The second will be what happens in the NDC, the state of the NDC going into that election, if the transition beyond John Mahama, who's not going to contest, would be chaotic or it would be seamless. That would then also influence how things will play out in terms of improving on the fortunes of the new patriotic party. But then again, it cannot also be contested that based on the survey details we've seen, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is the most marketed, right, amongst all the other persons who have declared their intentions to contest the flag bearership of the NPP going into 2028, is it not? I mean, from 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, 2024. You cannot discount that, is it not?
Certainly he is the most marketed. The other candidates, they have some blemishes here and there in terms of Mr. Kennedy Japan, in terms of Brian Champon. But when it comes to the former education minister, I think he has a very fantastic personality. But as to whether the delegates are ready for him, that in itself is something that I cannot tell. Maybe only time will tell when he's been able to put his act together, get a strong campaign message, and get a strong campaign, team. And that in itself will be able to push. So if you have Dr. Educhum as a wild card, well, I think that the NDC leadership will have a rethink, because unless there is something untoward about the time that he handled the affairs of the education, then it means that he's good to go. But other than that, if you look at the hierarchy, if it's not Dr. Bawumia, it's definitely going to be Kennedy Japan. He has a lot of issues. Ghanaians do not believe that, well, they will want him to be the president. He can be the presidential candidate, so he may be popular within the party, but without the party, it has its own challenges. And that is the more reason why the delegate will only go for Dr. Bawumia, because they think that Mr. Kennedy Japan may not be too much attractive to those who are outside the party. And that is very important. And so, in as much as Dr. Bawumia is not a stronger candidate, internally and externally, they are looking at the less of the evils, the lesser of the 2 or the 3 evils. And that in itself is what will inform their decision as to whom they should choose, for that particular portfolio come 2028. 2028 elections. And so Dr. Bawumia may have the overwhelming popularity, so to speak. But as to whether he will have the will and the capacity and whatever it takes to win the 2028 elections, only time will tell. There are so many indicators that are against him in terms of demographics and other things. Leadership style, whether he's a good leader or not. Is he very firm when it comes to issues? Does he really communicate the issues so well? Does he filibuster, when it comes to issues that he ought to have been firm? I mean, do people really trust him? You remember that I was among the first, if not the first, that spoke about credibility crisis of Dr. Bawumia, and that went as far to affect, it went too far to affect his electoral fortune, and that is why he lost, overwhelmingly. But you see, if you have the kingmakers, they will have to decide whether going with Dr. Bawumia is the right decision, or going with Kennedy Japan, or that of Dr. Brian Champon, who is a new entrant, so to speak. Sometimes I ask myself, you are the same person who gave an avowed support to Dr. Bawumia. What has really changed? Is it the case that because he was overwhelmingly beaten in the 2024 election, that's the more reason why you believe that you have a better chance of representing the NPP and then subsequently winning the elections? I think that the three have too many cobwebs, in their closet that Ghanaians will not really trust them that easily. Yes, Dr. Duchum, I think, may be a better candidate, but he can't win he's not in a position to win the membership of the party. And so that in itself is a difficult. Maybe he may be given the opportunity to assist Dr. Bawumia should Dr. Bawumia win the elections. But don't forget that there could be some surprises. But as it stands now, as far as the data is concerned, Dr. Bawumia is leading.
I appreciate your thoughts on this. Dr. Jonathan Asante-Okyere, he is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Coast. And yes, July 3rd, there's a meeting. That's 2 days away from today. We'll see what the outcome of the meeting will be. But then again, that decision of who leads the party is just going to be solely the responsibility of... Now there's a proposal that it should not be just delegates, a few persons selected as delegates to elect the flag bearer. There are those who are proposing that scope of the population within the party who elect the flag bearer should be expanded to include all eligible or members in good standing.
Yo, me na masese moja asopana mutie na afenso mota ehwe fa o comment ebra comment section na menkinkan emfama fefefe aha eye Ghanatube so modofo snowy ene de insem ne ebrem on subscribe na afenso fa onsa emia notification bell no se ne be a se me de insem ne tuma na onya ne intempa so sisi ade makram.